Yay!
Yay!
It's working. Okay, cool.
It's working. Hello, Speak About It friends and fans. We are here today. I'm Catherine.
And I'm Oronde.
And we are
showing
talking,
a lot of chats.
You are showing a lot of chats. It's almost spring out. Sun's out.
Chest out.
Welcome to the conversation, Oronde. I see that you just joined.
Yay! There I am.
So here we are talking about everybody's fave.
Your problematic fave.
Everybody just left. They quit. Well, we're actually really excited about this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And for my mom who's watching, can you just define what a problematic fave actually is?
Yes, I can. So I'm going to paint a picture for you, if you will. So imagine you're like at home and you're enjoying your favorite piece of pop culture. So like a song or TV show, movie, like maybe an article about your favorite artist. And all of a sudden you notice something that you hadn't noticed before that like makes you feel kind of weird, like kind of icky. And like, oh wait, is this like low-key like sexist or racist or like kind of rapey, or it's like just in some way off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not the worst thing you've ever heard, but it also just like doesn't feel great. So a good example would be that song Baby It's Cold Outside.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like everybody has some sort of thought on it, right? That it's like it's either just like a fun Christmas song and so people are really stoked about it. Some people are entirely neutral on it because they just say that it's, whatever.
Yeah.
And some people think that it's like everybody's favorite like holiday rape anthem and that like, people need to stop singing and stop. So that's what we mean by your problematic fave. Yeah.
And like, I think that's a perfect example because that example like captures that sort of gray area where we talk about things that are problematic. It's not like objectively good, like society has decided that this one's okay, or like objectively bad, like we've like decided that we're going to shun that thing. It's like up for debate for some people, and it can change for some people. Some people think some things are problematic and they're not. And we're having this conversation today with our own opinions, but we want you folks to also weigh in. Like, what do you think? What's your problematic fave? Do you disagree with the things we're about to say? Let us know in the comments below, and we will have a dialogue,
Nice.
which is so important. But to kick off this dialogue, Oronde, in the past like couple weeks, have you had a moment where you've been like enjoying a piece of media,
literally
and
all the
then
time,
all of a sudden it hits?
That's like doing this work. That's like all of the time.
What have we ruined recently for you?
So recently, I was like in the kitchen doing dishes, listening to Hotline Bling by Sir Drake. Perhaps you've heard of him. And all of a sudden I was like hearing the lyrics and I was like, oh, this song like might not be the best. Like if you've not heard Hotline Bling or not analyzed the lyrics like yours truly.
Nerd.
He's talking to an ex-partner, it sounds like, and it seems like at first it's just like, oh, he misses this person, like they stopped dating, and she seems to be doing well, and he's like kind of upset by that. But then when he said that like he's upset by the fact that she's doing well, like she's going out and making new friends and like has like glasses of champagne on the dance floor. And
he says great.
Like, she's like really thriving. Like she like says that like her passport's filling up. She's doing a bunch of traveling. Like
good for her, get those miles.
Yeah, and all that is still like okay, but then it gets to this point towards the end where he says that like she used to stay at home and be a good girl. And it's like, oh, like that feels kind of messed up, right? Like it's like, who the hell are you to say that like, she's like not a good girl anymore, or that like she was ever trying to be a good girl for you, and like staying at home with you was the only way to be a good girl. It feels like the power dynamics, like the gender dynamics of that, like feel off. Yeah, so it feels icky.
But you're like still maybe gonna listen to the song.
Yeah, like continue to do the dishes to that song. So
right.
It's fine.
That's like my like work bop. It is that Walk the Moon song, Shut Up and Dance.
She does love
like,
that song. I can verify.
And one time I played it 3 times in a row at work. Nobody was around. Maybe you were. But like on like the second of the 3 times I played it, I was like, wait a minute. This girl is like coming up to this guy and being like, shut up and dance with me.
Yeah.
Which like as a consent educator, excuse me.
Well, and it feels even worse, right? Because like the whole thing is like he's saying like, hey, it feels like you're holding back. Like, I think you might be my destiny. And then she's like, yeah, whatever. Shut up and dance with me.
Right. Which is like, oh, we're trying so hard to like get men to open up about their feelings. Like, what if the gender roles were reversed? And I'm not allowed to like this song anymore?
Yeah, and so it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's
and
a hard debate.
interesting. It's a hard debate, and I think that like sort of brings up the question of, and my sort of next question is, what is the difference between something that's like hashtag problematic versus like a thought-provoking, inspiring dialogue kind of work of art or media?
So I almost think that it's like how far they take the message, right?
Okay.
I think so. It's like a little bit intention and like a little bit of how far they take the message. So I think that it's most people when they're just like consuming a piece of pop culture, like they probably don't think they're going to get like a big life lesson. They're just trying to entertain themselves, right? And so I think that like if they're trying to be thought provoking and they don't like have a productive dialogue, or they don't like really like bring it full circle, or they or it's like kind of like too heavily veiled like what it is that they're doing, I think it loses some of the effectiveness. I think it's like no longer thought provoking and like kind of inches into problematic, because I think that people that are watching it, they might miss the point, right? They like might miss like what actually is happening. And that's where it starts to feel dangerous.
I think about that scene in Broad City, which like has been heavily criticized as being problematic for so many reasons, but also like is groundbreaking, so it's complicated. But that scene in season 2 in the first episode where
new people. Hi, people.
Hi, Jennifer and Laura.
Just so you guys know, catch you up to speed. So right now talking about your like problematic fave in pop culture. So something that you like to like watch or listen to, but like might be kind of messed up.
Yeah. And so we're talking about Broad City, which I love, but also is sometimes kind of messed up. Especially the scene where it's really hot in Abby's New York apartment and she's hooking up with this guy and he passes out halfway through. And she continues to hook up with him until she notices. And they have this whole like conversation afterwards, she and her friend Alana, about like, oh my God, was that rape? Ugh. But like the conversation sort of ends on this joke, and then we don't hear from the guy ever again, and they like hook up, and then I just like don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, because like, it's so again, right? Like fundamentally, it's a comedy show, right? And so it's like, is that their job to like have this dialogue? But it feels like if you're bringing it up, then you should bring it up in a way that's responsible, right? Because like it's like this could be a thought-provoking moment, right? Because it's looking at the gender dynamics. Like the gender dynamics are switched from what you normally hear and see about in these types of stories. So that's really interesting in and of itself. And then it brings up this really interesting question of consent, right? And like when and how does one revoke consent? And like, when is it no longer okay to hook up with someone?
And these are all questions we're having.
And so that can be like a really important conversation. But like I was saying before, it feels almost irresponsible to like bring up a thing and then not bring it all the way home to like show like what's the real implication is of it. And the only thing that I can think of is that like maybe the whole point is to be open-ended, so that way people at the end are like, oh, I need to talk about this with someone, and it maybe sparks a dialogue.
And like, is that good? Or like, I think the icky feeling for me was coming from like, I don't know if these folks like totally thought out the implications
do they
like
fully understand
this scene, and like if they, I just don't know what they were doing, and so that unclearness is like what causes that questioning, which is like productive but also can feel icky and problematic. Since we're on the subject of consent and sexual assault in media, I'm wondering how #MeToo kind of plays into this conversation. So sort of moving the conversation away from like stories and plot lines and instances of in a piece of media. What happens when your problematic fave is a person and like the thing that you're critiquing is their personal actions and the things? Like what happens when people do bad things and they create art? Like
I think like at the root of this, it's like there's not a right or wrong answer. I think that's like part of why this is such a frustrating conversation. And I almost think that like the most almost like responsible way of looking at this is to figure out how to be a responsible, mature consumer of media, right? And because I think that it's like there's a bunch of different options that one can take. Like you can boycott, right? If you see that something doesn't feel right and it feels like it's like maybe marginalizing a group or doing something that's problematic, you can boycott, right? But like that means that you can't enjoy this thing that you really enjoy. And so like there's the pros and cons to that. Because like, you know, we vote with our money and we vote with our time, right? And so if we aren't putting money towards it, then we know that thing isn't flourishing. That's helpful. You could try to separate the art from the artist, which is like might be fine for you. And I guess that is a question of figuring out what your own values and priorities are. And like if entertainment and art is more important to you than like these other social issues, that's fine. But you also have to understand then like the people around you then, that's going to send a hard message for a lot of people, you know? Like some people are going to see that and think that that's like an endorsement of this thing or of this person and their actions. Some people that you care about even might be hurt by that, right?
Right.
And then some people that are on the fence might think, like, that are trying to figure out, is this a problem? Is this not? That might push them over into thinking that, oh, I guess it's not a problem. I guess we're not mad about this.
You have to sort of deal with the consequence of that action of like deciding to separate the art from the artist if the artist is bad.
Yeah. I think for me, so like looking at a problematic fave that lots of people know, Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines.
Oh boy.
Which is, which feels like the worst for a lot of reasons. And like people have talked about it a lot, so I won't get super deep into it. But whenever that song comes on, like it's fun. Like I want to twerk to it. However, I also don't want to like reinforce the patriarchy. And so I always like when that song comes on, I'm like dancing and I'm like, hey guys, this song reinforces the patriarchy, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's become like almost like I like do it in a way that's kind of joking, but it's definitely, it's like an invitation really for that conversation. Because I'm like, I want to be able to enjoy this thing at a party. I don't want to ruin the mood. But I also want, if like someone's like, wait, what do you mean it reinforces the patriarchy or doesn't agree or something like that? I would immediately stop dancing and have the conversation. It's really my way of like checking into the people around me, like, wait, we're on the same page, right?
Yeah,
like we all understand.
You've like created a safe space to like enjoy the problematic thing together.
Yeah. And so I think that like that for me, like that's my way of dealing with like the problematic fave, like inviting a conversation if like one needs to be had and we're in the space to have it. But still like enjoying it within what my value system allows.
I almost feel like that, especially in like that instance, is maybe a better strategy than what I do, which is like fold my arms and sit in the corner at that wedding when the DJ has like decided to play that song. And like, that's, you know, to like keep me safe and like happy and like show my protest, but also like maybe doesn't like open up a dialogue with like cousin Jimmy who like doesn't know any better. And so I think that is like a kind of nice thing to end on, which is that when we're dealing with these problematic pieces of art, I think the way forward is to speak about it.
Oh, this?
Hey, it's to find a way to have that dialogue and like use that piece of art, whatever its intention was, to like spark a dialogue about the issues that you care about. So while Robin Thicke's Blurred Lines probably like wasn't thinking about having a like progressive dialogue about like consent, like you've made it happen by being like, hey, this is a great bop, but like it reinforces the patriarchy. Yeah,
and I think with that, I think like the second piece of that then is not actually taking your messages about like society or about these like social issues from pop culture, right? That like use pop culture as a jumping off point to have a conversation with yourself and have a conversation with people around you about what do we value, what do we believe, what actions are we taking, which like isn't always the most fun, but I think is a really important thing to do.
Empowering.
Yeah, it is really empowering to know
this can inform me.
Yeah.
But I can also inform it by choosing to consume it or not, or talking about it.
Yeah, and so I think that's that's a good ending spot for me too, I think.
Yeah. So in conclusion, speak about it. Have your problematic faves. Share them with us if you want. And share with us what you think about this conversation we just had. We're going to post a follow-up blog post on our blog, speakaboutitonline.com/blog, with some more resources. There's actually some really awesome media articles, writing, podcasts, etc. about problematic faves that I am super enthusiastic to share with all our followers. So thank you to the folks who are tuning in or who will tune in the future.
Ooh, hello, future folks.
Hey. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and we will see you next month for Hot Goss.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.